The laboratory shall access to equipment required for the correct performance of laboratory activities, and that can influence the result. So in these standards, it's the first time to give a very clearly scope of the equipment. The equipment is not only including those traditional measurement instrument and the measurement standards, also covered the software, reference material, reference data, reagents, consumable, and other auxiliary apparatus. So it's a big concept. So you may notice in this clause no longer use the furnish, because furnish that only mean that the laboratory itself possess that equipment, but it's not necessary, because some testing or calibration is conducted at the customer side, and some equipment cannot be transported easily, so sometimes you have to borrow the equipment from the customer. So the standards only require the laboratory shall access, not furnish, the equipment required. And clause 6.4.1, there are two notes relevant to reference materials. Those notes are recommended by ISO Ramico, and so the working group decided to add those notes and the clause 6.4.1. It's quite relevant to the reference material and just for the information of the users of these standards. When the laboratory uses the equipment outside its permanent control, the laboratory shall ensure that requirements for equipment of these standards are met. So how to interpret the equipment outside its permanent control? As I said in the previous slide, that some testing or calibration activities are conducted at the customer site. So for those equipment which is not easy to transport it, can we use the customer's equipment? So in that case, if you use the equipment of the customer, you have to make sure that equipment meets the requirement of the testing measures. So in that case, those staff who is responsible for the testing or calibration, they have obligation to record the condition of the requirement, what evidence they collected to demonstrate that equipment meets the requirements of the testing or calibration methods. The laboratory shall have procedure for handling, transport, storage, use, and planned maintenance of the equipment in order to ensure proper functioning and to prevent contamination or deterioration. So compare with the old version of 1725, this clause is the same, there's no change. The laboratory shall verify the equipment conformed with the specified requirement before being placed or returned into the service. There are two changes in this clause. The first one is to use the verify to replace check or calibrate. The second change is when the equipment is returned into the service, the laboratory also need to verify the equipment meet the specified requirements. For example, when the equipment is sent out to be repaired or calibrated or borrowed by another laboratory, when the equipment returned to the laboratory should verify again whether the equipment continually meet the requirement of testing or calibration methods. Clause 6.4.5 requires that equipment used for the measurement shall be capable of achieving the measurement accuracy or measurement uncertainty required to provide a valid result. So in nature, there's no changes in this clause. It's almost same as the last version of 17025. The clause 6.4.6, which is regarding the calibration of equipment, and it gives the principles. One, the equipment shall be calibrated. So in the following two situations, the equipment shall be calibrated. The first one is that the measurement accuracy or measurement uncertainty affect the validity of the reported result. So this situation is quite the same as the last version of 1725. The second situation is that in some situation, the accuracy or measurement certainty of equipment doesn't affect significantly on the testing or calibration result. The result is traceable to the parameter of that equipment. This equipment shall be calibrated so as to provide the measurement traceability of the reported result. In the notes, three typical equipment need to be calibrated are given. The first one is for those equipment used to measurement of measured. For example, use a balance to perform a mass measurement. The second example is for those equipment used to make correction to the measured value. For example, in temperature measurement, in that case, the thermometer needs to be calibrated. The third example is for those equipment used to obtain a measurement result calculated from multiple quantities. For example, power meter, because we have to calibrate current and voltage, then we calculate the power. Here I give you an example. An instrument doesn't affect the accuracy of testing or calibration result. It still needs to be calibrated. We use gauge block to calibrate caliper. Based on the evaluated measurement uncertainty of calibration result, the significant component is the resolution of caliper. The contribution from the gauge block could be negligible compared with the resolution of caliper. But it doesn't mean the gauge block doesn't need to be calibrated, because the calibration result is traceable to gauge block. To ensure the metrological traceability of the calibration result, the gauge block shall be calibrated. For those equipment to need to be calibrated, the laboratory shall establish a calibration program, and this program shall be reviewed and adjusted as necessary in order to establish confidence in the status of calibration. And there's a question for this clause is what information should be included in calibration program. And one as accreditation body, and when we conduct assessment, what information you want to get for calibration program. Generally, when we decided this equipment should be calibrated, we should consider the four factors. For this equipment, which parameter shall be calibrated, and what's the normal measurement range we use for testing or for the calibration purpose, and what's the accuracy required for this equipment or measurement uncertainty required for this instrument based on the testing or calibration methods, and what accreditation cycle or interval based on the stability of the equipment. So generally, in the calibration program, we have to consider at least these 4 factors. Stability of the equipment may be getting deteriorate. Any change of the scope of the usage of the equipment may lead to that we change the calibration program, because the measurement range will change and the parameter may be changed. So we have to review the calibration program, and based on the situation of the equipment, and also need to consider the purpose we use for this equipment, because we always put the equipment into the for the new testing purpose or calibration purpose. So based on those information, the laboratory may need to review the calibration program to analyze whether it is suitable for the application purpose, and also to evaluate the stability of the calibration to see whether it need to adjust the calibration cycle and some other factors included in the calibration program. So in the new standards, the new requirements is that the calibration program need to be reviewed and adjusted as necessary. All equipment requiring calibration or which have a defined period of validity should be labeled, coded, or otherwise identified to allow the users of the equipment to readily identify the status of a calibration or period of validity. Comparing with Clause 5.5.8 in 2005 version of 1725, not only equipment requiring calibration, but also for those equipment such as reagent, reference material, which always have a period of validity. For those substances, they also need to be labeled or coded to ensure the laboratory personnel to easily identify the validity of the status. What the information should be included in the label, and in the old version of 1725, it requires the label shall include the date of last calibration, next date, or expiration date. And in the new standards, there's no such specific requirements. What information should be included in the label will be handled or decided by the laboratory. And for the accreditation body, we only focus whether the testing staff could know the validity status of the equipment easily. Another consideration is that many laboratories already established the information management system. When the personnel start the measurement procedure or process, the system can automatically give the validity of the status of the equipment, so the labeling the equipment is not necessary for this situation. So this requirement give a lot of flexibility to the laboratory. And what way you adopt, I think the purpose is the same, to ensure the users can easily identify the status of calibration for that equipment they are going to use. For those equipment no longer meet the requirement of testing or calibration methods, the laboratory shall take actions such as adding the label or mark to prevent its use. So this clause is the same as the old version of 1725. There's no changes on this. Based on the stability of the equipment, the laboratory shall decide whether the intermediate checks are necessary to maintain the confidence in the performance of the equipment. The first step is to decide which equipment need to be checked intermediately. The second is what the procedure to be followed, and then implement this procedure. Comparing with 2005 version of 1725, there is a bit of change on the requirement of intermediate check. In the 2005 version of standards, the laboratory only needs to consider whether intermediate check is necessary for those equipment requiring the calibration. In the new version of the standard, the laboratories shall also need to consider to recheck some equipment which don't requiring calibration to ensure it continually meets the requirement of testing or calibration methods. How to check and the frequency of the check will be decided based on the application condition and the stability of the equipment. When calibration and the reference material data include reference value or correction factors, the laboratory shall ensure the reference value and the correction factors are updated and implemented as appropriate to meet the specified requirements. So this clause has no change compared with 2005 version. The laboratory shall take practical measures to prevent unintended adjustment of the equipment from invalidating results. And this clause comes from the old version of 1725, so there is no change on this. This clause is regarding the records of the equipment. Compared with 2005 version of 1725, there is no significant change. And in 2005 version, there is a clause 5.5.4 requires equipment significant to the result shall be uniquely identified when practical. This clause has been deleted because it's overlapped with the bullet second. There's a clear requirement on unique identification. So it's kind of duplication. So the clause 5.5.4 is deleted. In the records of equipment, there's only one point is deleted, that is the manufacturer instruction, because manufacturer instruction doesn't belong to the record. It's kind of documents, so it should be controlled according to the documentation requirements. So this is deleted from this section. So you may notice that in the requirements for equipment, these requirements are deleted from the new version of 1725. The first one is the equipment should be operated by authorized personnel, and these requirements is now no longer emphasized by the new standards, because when you authorize the people to perform some testing or calibration, the equipment used during the testing or calibration process will be automatically or authorized. So it's not information to emphasize this again. The second requirement is updated and up-to-date instruction on use and maintenance of the equipment should be readily available for use by the appropriate laboratory personnel. In nature, the instruction on the use and the maintenance of equipment is a external document to be controlled by the laboratory. So the management for this kind of external document should be follow the requirement on the procedure established by laboratory for document control. So it's not necessary to specifically emphasize this more. So this requirement is deleted. The last one, this requirement already covered by clause 6.4.4. So this clause is deleted.